Hey guys, Dishsoap here with the 14.2 headliner and comp tier list. Honestly, meta hasn't changed too much since last patch, but a few major developments kind of leaving the meta like a little more narrow than it used to be, like at least with the higher cost comps, but there's also more reroll variety, so it's a little bit of both. But let's just jump into the headliners and then we'll jump into the comps. I'd like to introduce you to the Mobalytics TFT overlay. You get access to the best team comps by challenger experts, myself included, directly in-game. There are also full guides attached to each comp, as well as automatic augment data and an item cheat sheet. Click the link in the description to download. Here we have the 1-cost headliners. The only change from last patch is that I moved down Tarek to like the A tier. I think I was kind of overrating him last patch. He was good on like the first 3 rounds of the game, but he's just a unit that like scales really badly over time. Even though he's an A tier right now, he scales worse than a lot of these units into like stage 3. He's definitely one of the ones you want to be dropping earlier, like with even Yasuo as well. And outside of that, I've just like moved some of the units around in like the place of these, but we can talk about each unit individually really quick. Olaf is the sole S tier. Pretty much never skip him. He is like the tankiest unit in the game, and he also does really good damage. Enemy needs like either a lot of CC or a lot of single target to be able to kill him, because he can kind of just out heal anything with his headliner and items. There are reroll Olaf builds that exist. I think they're only good with like specific augments that have to deal with like bruisers, Pentakill, or Gargantuan Titan's augment. But it's pretty good if you get those. I think you just want to go like 6 bruiser, Olaf 3. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really play that much, but it's somewhat viable. I usually just buy him, keep him 2-star, and then just use him to win streak. Now in A tier we have Jinx. Jinx reroll kind of went from meme status to somewhat viable. I still don't actually play it at all, because I think the comp is pretty much hard capped at a 3rd still, even after all of the buffs. It just will stomp the early game, and then once people start getting their comps online, you can't really do anything. There's no like good way to cap out a Jinx board, unfortunately. But she is really strong. She got a 580 buff, which is one of the biggest buffs you can give a unit. I mostly just buy her kind of like Olaf as a strong backline DPS, and then just use her to hold my items. Same thing with Corki, just use him item holder. He's a very good Ezreal item holder, and we'll talk about Ezreal's relevance in a bit. Vi, just another solid melee. Worse than Olaf, but she does provide good CC. Get Mosher in, she has a little bit of healing, good damage, solid unit. Eve, kind of the same, just melee, slight healing, good damage. Eve scales worse than Olaf and Vi, just because she's not very tanky. So once people start getting a lot more single target online, like late stage 2, early stage 3, she falls off a cliff. Tarek already kind of talked about him. Nami's not that bad of a headliner. It's just with like the meta shift and TF getting nerfed, and like the disco, I think 4 and 6 disco getting nerfed, you're just not really angling that line that much anymore. I have 0 games of TF on the patch, and I don't see it doing well at all. So if you're not really angling that comp, it's just kind of awkward to buy her as a unit. But if you have AP items, she's still a good holder. Just maybe try to get out of the disco earlier rather than later. Yasuo is like the worst of like the melee item hold carries. If I'm not trying to reroll, I would rather have like Eve, Vi, Olaf, whatever. But he is one of the ones that's more viable as a reroll, since he has good scaling. I would not recommend rerolling Yasuo unless you have a lot of natural Yasuo is not just the chosen, and you also need like a slammable item and a good component for him. Slammable item is like, I don't know, just usually just like some sword item. You need Edge of Night on him, but something like BT to kill some units in the early game could be nice. A Hodge is very reasonable. But if you don't have items on him, he's not going to get the kills on stage 2, which means he's not going to scale. And then you also kind of want him to be a 3-item carry, starting on 3-1 when you want to 3-star him. So you need the items early or you can't play him. And then we have Annie here as well. Annie's like the most niche of these units, but she can still be very powerful. I don't think she's any good without Emo active, either from the headliner trait or a Mumu or Vex. But if you get those and like a mana or AP item, she can definitely do a lot of damage. And then we have Kinch and Cassante. I don't really consider them unless I have Country or Heartsteel active. They just aren't that good of units. Like most of the units' powers and the traits. Kinch is sometimes good with like 4 bruiser and a 2-star backline. I would consider it then. And then we have Lilia Kennen. I really don't like these. I think it's better to just have them as normals and then get super fan and like buff another unit. I just think they're fairly weak individually. There's definitely spots you can buy them, like if the traits just synergize well and you need an upgraded unit trying to win streak, but they're definitely not that strong. Now for 2 costs, we have them split by tiers of high tempo / rerollable, strong early, and meh. In high tempo / rerollable, we have Kayle. I think Kayle is like the best item holder in the game, and she's also a viable reroll now after her rework. Kaisa is the best AD item holder in the game, for Ezreal. She can hold like the blue buff IE very well. She's not that good to reroll. I think more science has to be done on her. Like when I've looked into it, like her headliner is just awkward to fit. We'll talk somewhat about it later. I would mostly just recommend using her as a tempo unit. Seraphine as well, both good for AP and like AP item holding and rerolling. With TF nerf, that's like one less niche for her to be an item holder for, but she can still item hold for Karthus, so it's fine. Gnar is just a very, very solid unit. Not many boards on stage 3 can kill a headliner Gnar. Definitely there's S tier for that. Gnar reroll is kind of a thing, but I don't have enough confidence and knowledge about it to tell you how to play it. So trying to figure that out. Cat as well, she's decent item holder. I think she's slightly worse than Kayle and Seraphine for item holding, but after buffs to her 3-star, she's a very solid reroll right now. Bard as well, not a very like worse item holder than the others, still decent, viable as a reroll for sure. Then we have Senna. I know some people play Senna reroll. I think she's just worse than all the other ones, but maybe you have enough Sennas or like a true damage bet you can justify it. But she's decent item holder as well. I think she's like a better item holder than Cat and Bard. I just have her down a tier because I don't really like her with reroll. Gragas is a pretty good tank. Issue with Gragas is you kind of need to have like a lot of damage to justify buying him because your board is not going to do much damage if you haven't chosen Gragas on it. Garen as well, pretty similar to Gragas, but Garen has the potential to like actually close out fights by just surviving until the end and actually doing a decent amount of damage in OT, but he's just like a big meat shield at the end of the day. Aphelios is kind of here just for Heartsteel. He's whatever. Twitch is here because sometimes you buy him when you're playing Executioner line, but usually you want to pivot to Vex or Samir headliner. Talk about that later as well. And then we have Mad, we have Jackson Pantheon. I think I would only buy Pantheon if I'm just like desperate for frontline and I don't want to roll and he just shows up. Jax can be like EP item holder as well. I've seen like a tiny bit of success with like the old school JG Hodge Jax builds, but I'm not gonna recommend anyone to play it. I will say I've also seen some people experimenting with like 6 Mosher, reroll Jax, reroll Gnar, reroll Urgot. Again, don't have enough knowledge or experience to say anything about that. For 3 costs, I feel like 3 cost headliners is like the weirdest thing to talk about because usually for tempo purposes, you're just gonna buy the first one that shows up because they're all just basically just stronger than the 2 cost ones usually, unless items don't make sense. And then for rerolling them, like you're just gonna buy the headliner of the comp you're gonna reroll. So it's weird ranking them. For tempo purposes, I think Vex is on a whole nother level. Even after the like CC nerfs, I think her damage is just insane. She's one of the only 3 costs I'm actually like somewhat okay with keeping on like early stage 4. I think she can do a decent amount of work. But yeah, and then like in the buy it makes sense tier. Like we have Yone. Like Yone reroll is still viable, but I don't know, Yone for tempo purposes is not that good. Same with Riven, like exact same thing. Set's decent, but you're probably not going to keep the sets like when you're doing your 4-2 roll down. So I don't know, if you see a set, probably buy a set then sell it 1-4-2. I don't know where that goes on that tier list though. If you're keeping them for like 4 rounds. Samira, I think she's a worse headliner than Vex, but if you're like committed to like a country line, obviously she's one of the best you can get. And then we just have all these like 3 cost tanks. If you need a 3 cost tank, buy a 3 cost tank. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just weird talking about it. Lulu got buffed. There are like murmurings of Lulu reroll being viable. I'm not sure what board they're running. It might be similar to like the Seraphine board we talk about. Personally, I don't really think I think she really needs like a duo carry setup to work because she's just not very consistent. If I learn more about it, I might talk about it in the next video. Urgot got buffed. But honestly, like you're only gonna buy them for 4 rounds, right? Because you'd buy them on like stage 3 and then sell them on 4-2. Same with Set. Same with all these other 3 cost tanks. Echo, same as the 3 cost tanks. And then MF, playing Dash Jazz Baby, slamming AD items or attack speed items. You're gonna want MF. You probably don't want MF in any other spot, besides maybe just you have her as an AD item holder for a few rounds. And then we have Lux. I think Lux is just not that good for tempo. I think she's usually a worse item holder than a lot of the 2 quests I talk about. And also she kind of got a little bit worse when people stopped playing Disco, because she was one of the best counters to like the people comping up for Disco. There is like a comp running around that's like Bruiser, EDM, Lux. It started getting popular like last patch. I haven't seen much of it this patch because I think like meta shifts, a lot more people are contesting Zed and not many more Disco people to abuse. Yeah, it was a niche comp back then. It's even more niche now. So I have her in her own tier, I guess. And now for the 4 costs, gradual nerfs to some things basically made it so Heartsteel is like standalone the best line in the game. It's usually the only thing that wins games. The reason for that is you just get so much extra resources. Headliners that fit in the Heartsteel line are, of course, Ezreal, but also Zed. We'll talk about Zed later. It's been optimized to a point where Like 90% of the time you're running Ezreal Zed as duo carries. Poppy is also fantastic in Ezreal comp, especially if you already have the Ezreal. Like Ezreal's chosen effect is not even that good because you usually want to fit MF and then +1 Heartsteel is meh. But if you already have the Ezreal too, getting a unit like Poppy or even Zac can be good. Viego's here because I think he's the best headliner in the Pentakill line. And then we have the settle for these tier. The Karthus and Akali picks are also for the Pentakill line. I think Viego is a better headliner than Karthus because Karthus's superfan item is Archangel, and Archangel got a lot worse for him after the rework. Basically, his rework makes him gain AP from crit, and he doesn't gain mana when he kills units anymore. So mana items and attack speed got a lot better on Karthus, and crit got a lot better on Karthus, while flat AP has gotten a lot worse. So, I mean, you would still buy a Karthus because it's a Karthus too, but his superfan item is mediocre now. You would rather just have the Viego or even a Kayle, I think, if you already have the Karthus too. And then Zac is basically here for Heartsteel. He's a worse tank than Poppy, but he's pretty good after all the buffs they gave him. Poor. I'm not, it's not meaning that these units are like completely terrible, it's just you would buy them when you're poor. Ahri's not even that bad of a unit. The thing is, the comps that you play her, like the most popular line for Ahri is the superfan melee line for her, and you want one of those melee units to be your chosen, and you don't want Ahri to be your chosen. So yeah, she's just in a weird spot where like her regular unit is more valuable than her chosen, kind of like Karthus, but a little bit more. Caitlyn is just Dollar Tree Ezreal at this point. If you're broke and Ezreal's so contested, you probably just buy Caitlyn so you don't die. If you can get all the legendaries around her, like Lucian getting all the jazz bonuses and stuff, especially on 8-bit Caitlyn, she can still perform. Like I've won games with Caitlyn this patch. She's not that bad. It's just, I mean, she's Dollar Tree Ezreal. Thresh, Guardian Frontline is not the most popular in stage like 4 and 5. You would much rather just have Poppy or Zac. Blitz, because Sentinel is mid and Disco got nerfed. And then TF is here and TF tier because he got nerfed and he's worse than the other stuff. But honestly, I don't know, I might be underrating him. I just don't see it do well in any of my games. So it is what it is. And then the 5 costs, I don't really think it's worth talking about. Usually Yorick and Alawi are better than what you have, and all of the other ones are good if you have items for them. If you don't have items for them, don't buy them. And now for the sole S tier comp of the patch, we have Heartsteel, Ezreal Zed duo carry. This is like the core of the comp. You're getting value out of early Heartsteel, cashing out into an Ezreal Zed duo carry board. You get Zac for EDM Bruiser with Set. Yone gives you Heartsteel and Crowd Diver. I used to call this comp AD Flex, and I made a whole video about it. The reason this comp got optimized down to being mostly Ezreal and Zed is because they buffed Zac, they buffed EDM, they buffed 2 Crowd Diver, and they buffed Ezreal. So just a lot of small incremental things led to this being the most optimized version. And note that they didn't buff Kate, they didn't buff Akali. So if stuff gets buffed, people usually tend to play it. And then we're fitting a lot of these synergies in, so Jazz just makes sense. You also get Big Shot out of it. Obviously, you can run Lucian over Bard. Lux fits in here for Dazzler EDM. Decent to run. If you don't have lots of frontline items, say you have mostly carry items for your duo carry, you can run something like a Poppy, an Alawi, even like random Thresh 2 just for the CC. If you somehow just high roll and hit like Z2, Ezreal 2 normally on roll down, I think like the best possible chosen you can hit is like Emo Poppy. Either Lux or a frontline unit if you need it can be good. And obviously when you go 9, you just add Lucian, you add like a Lawi over Set. I mean, if you have like Heartsteel chosen, you could add like Kane 2 and just keep greeting. You can add Yorick Thresh. I don't know. When you go 9, you probably win. Yeah, this is the core of the comp on 8. It's powerful due to Heartsteel. If you're playing this without extra resources for Heartsteel, expect just the top 4. If you're contested, can't hit any of your units, expect a bot 4. I've taken both top 4s and buff 4s this patch with this comp, but it is very, very consistently the comp that wins the lobby now. So it's our sole S tier. Starting off with A tier, it's the 4-cost comp that you'll most often see in the top 4. It's just Pentakill Superfan with Karthus, Akali, Viego trio carry. They reworked Karthus. I think they were intending to like nerf him slightly because people were, myself included, were complaining about how he just one-shots your carry and it's not very fun. They didn't really change anything about him. I think they actually buffed him. Like, I'm not trying to flame them that hard, but yeah, they said they don't want him one-shotting your units on the first cast, and he basically does still. So that's fun. All the rework did is just change his build, and he makes him like better to scale into late fights as well. I think this is probably his BIS, Shojin Adaptive. And then last item can be whatever. I've seen people do red buff or Morello for the attack speed anti-heal. I've seen Nashers, I've seen Guardbreaker, all of this have good stats. You can also replace it with an AP item if you could drop lots of rods, like Archangel Deathcap, but they're worse than the attack speed options. because he scales with multiple casts now. Usually I prefer itemizing Viego over Akali as my secondary. Usually he just wants healing plus melee. He's very, very flexible. I think this is theoretically his BIS. Same with Akali. You also probably want some form of Shred Sunder if it makes sense, and some form of anti-heal wherever it fits. But I'm just showing the best items for carries in this. Tank items can be okay. They're just a little underwhelming because you're gonna put them on like a Mord 2 or Nico 2. They aren't very good tanks. If you're heavily relying on Karthus, it might be worth investing 3 items in a Mord. I feel like it's definitely just worse than getting more carries online. A tier comp. The reason why it's good is because it punishes people that are low rolling still. It's still just the low roll punisher, and it's the strongest forecast comp on stage 4 before people get Alawi online. Alawi still is the hard counter to this comp, as well as melee. Any backline strategy that doesn't have Alawi will just fold over to this, and you can use that momentum to go 9, hit Yorick, hit 7 Pentakill, and go second to the Heartsteel player because they have 4 extra radiance for free. Okay, not that extreme, but you get what I'm saying. The next comp we'll talk about is the Executioner comp with Twin Terror and without Twin Terror. With Twin Terror, it doesn't really change. You're rolling for like double Vex carry and maybe double Twitch carry. I prefer late game swapping to double Samira carry. I don't know, double Twitch, like Twitch 3, Twitch 2, Vex 3, Vex 2, pretty good. Just whatever you hit. If you're like loose streaking, you're probably gonna have to keep Twitch. But if you're playing it from ahead, maybe you could sell Twitch on Wolves, greed for the Vex. I think Executioner Chosen is very, very important. For Executioner is a massive spike. You can either have Vex, Twitch, or Samira be it. Don't really worry about like specific items that much in this comp. I will mention though that you really, really want, I mean, there's a few prios in this comp. You really, really want 1, Immar Shred for your Vex, and 2, at least 1 Stone Plate. Because your Mumu is gonna be your only frontliner, he needs some help. And then like the damage items, I have like 2 Vex builds to show. The items don't have to be very specific. Notably, she just really wants AP, damage amp, healing, and like 1 tier. She doesn't actually really need a mana item, like a mana generating one, like a blue buff or a Shojin. Adaptive's alright with her cast tempo, but 1 tier, like just like the tier component itself, will give her 2 less autos. So I think it's a valuable thing to have from something like a Hodge or a Shiv or a Adaptive or an Archangel. It's 2 less autos, and 2 less autos on the first Vex cast, which will probably do the most damage, is very, very important. And then stuff like Death Cap, healing, Morello, red buff can all be good. Yeah, same kind of deal with Twitch and Samira. Armor Shred's okay in this comp, not a prio. But just in general, on Executioners, healing and damage amp are often going to be their best stats because they gain so much damage from the trait. And this is the version without Twin Terror. It's just you roll on 7, and instead of playing like double of the units, you just play straight up 6 Executioner. Ideally, it's Vex or Samira chosen. Vex is better than Samira, and you just roll for both of them 3-star. Again, the same itemization things we talked about earlier. Vex really wants 1 tier healing damage amp, and then Samira also wants healing damage amp and AD. Crit's actually not that good when you have 6 Executioner, so that's why we're not going IE. If it was 2 Executioner country, IE is very, very good, but not in 6 exec. Notably, I prefer playing 6 Executioner so much more over country. I think in my last video, I talked about how I just didn't think country was very good without a spat. And yeah, this is why, like, this comp is just straight up better. Even with spat, like, I don't know. I still think this comp is just better than 7 country, honestly, if you can hit the Vex 3 and the Amumu 3. I basically started playing this version over country 100% of the time last patch and this patch, and I haven't looked back. Yeah, very good. I like it. And then we just have Yone. I will say though, like, I mean, Yone is good if you can hit Yone 3, but the problem is, like, all these people are playing Heartsteel now, and the standard Heartsteel board keeps Yone. So you're gonna have a really, really hard time hitting Yone in this meta. Like, if you can't hit Yone, you'll probably bot 4. You have to be very, very cognizant of what people are playing in the lobby, and if it looks like you can't hit Yone 3, you probably are meant to pivot to a 4-class comp. Obviously, still Yone 3 is still very, very strong, can top 2 pretty easily. Riven here as well. Riven got a small nerf, but she's still very good. I will note though that like lose streaking into Riven isn't going to be as good as it was last patch. Last patch, you could pretty consistently lose streak into a good placement with Riven, but now if you don't hit the Riven 3 extremely early, you're just going to be fighting lots of Heartsteel cash outs. And if you don't have a decent enough HP buffer, you might just end up going like 6th or 7th, even with a strong board. Riven Bis hasn't changed. Still good comp. Both of these melee comps are very, very strong into Karthus. There's a lot of Karthus running around. If your lobby is more Karthus-centric than Heartsteel-centric, these can be very, very good counter picks and can win games off of that. And now we have a bunch of different superfan lines. This is the other 4-cost one along with Karthus. I think it's a worse line on average than Karthus, but still decent. It's the Ahri superfan melee line. Some people call it Ahri warriors. I feel like melee is simpler than warriors, so I just called Ahri melee. Basically, you're duo carrying an Ahri backline using the superfan trait web to prop up a melee option. I think Zed's item is BT, Poppy's superfan item is Warmogs, Akali is Hodge, and Viego is Titans. You're looking for one of these 4 units with Lilia, Nico, Echo, Kennen, Ahri, and a Spellweaver, usually Lulu or Sona. And then one more support synergy unit with these guys. Notably, like Poppy, it might be like Vex or Gnar or Yorick. With Zed, it might be like Kiana or Katarina or like, I don't know, Zac maybe. With Viego, it's going to be maybe more Gnar over Spellweaver or something. With Akali, I actually think you want to go true damage Akali in this comp because KDA Akali doesn't really have any synergy with Ahri because Ahri hits frontline and KDA Akali can't really solo kill backline that well. But if you have her as true damage, her and Ahri can actually like contribute together. The way you would get her as a true damage with Ahri on the board is since you have 3 KDA units and only 2 true damage units, you would need an extra true damage unit to transform her. So you would need, ideally it'd be something like Kiana, but Senna could work as well. I also see a lot of people in other regions do true damage, like if they get a spats and it makes sense for this line, they get like spats and a bunch of tiers and stuff. You can go true damage Ahri, and then that like fulfills the entire requirement of getting being able to transform her into true damage. And I've seen that do pretty well. But yeah, Ahri, these melee units as duos. If I had to rank them, I'm not sure if Poppy or Zed is better, but these are the best. And then probably Viego, and then Akali, unless you have Spat, and then Akali becomes like as good as these with Spat. Decent line, good top 4 line, hard to win. I think it's slightly worse than the Karthus line because of the lack of backline access that Karthus provides. And then the last 4 comps, they're all different comps, but they're all very similar, and you can like play into a lot of them at the same time. They're the Superfan 2-cost backline comps. That is Superfan Kayle Reroll, Superfan Seraphine Reroll, Superfan Bard Reroll, and Superfan Katarina Reroll. The gist of the comps is that you use the extra item plus the good trait web of Superfans to get a 3-item carry, win streak stage 3, hit your 3 stars earlier stage 4 so you don't bleed out, and then push for extra units to top 4. I have them ranked in order of how strong I think they are. I think Kayle is actually the best one. She got reworked recently to where she's not reliant on the like 5-second timer. She has a normal mana bar, and once she fills it up, she'll do her big cast. Basically, all you need to know is that this rework made attack speed a lot better on her, and it made the Superfan item, Rageblade, that you got, like very, very good. Her best build is Gunblade +1. Rabadon's is slightly better than Archangel, but it's kind of hard to get 3 rods, so I just have Archangel on here. The core of the board is this: Lilia, Nico, Mord, Gnar, Kayle. The last unit you get is just going to depend on your headliner. If it's Pentakill, you want like another Pentakill. The easiest one to get is Olaf because it's like cheap. You might not hit a 4 costs, but obviously Viego or Karthus are better. If it's Edgelord, you want another Edgelord in. Ideally, Viego's the best because he shares the trait, but I don't know, you might not hit it, so you just play a random Riven on 6. And yeah, this comp still struggles to close out games. All of the 2-cost comps do, just because she can't really deal with the rapid scaling of the 4 and 5-cost comps. But if you can push to level 8 and get a decent Viego duo carry, or even like a Karthus or Yorick online, she can really, really do well. Another way to cap out this board is getting Mord 3. However, Mord is really, really popular in the meta due to the Karthus line, so it's kind of hard to get Mord as well. Karthus and the melee comps. The next reroll we have is Seraphine Reroll. I think I have a video on it that came out recently. BIS on her is going to be Shojin, and then Morello or Nashers. I think Morello is slightly better. And then the superfan item is going to be Deathcap. The best headliner is going to be KDA because it lets you fit 5 KD on 7 with Ahri or Akali. I think Ahri is better, and then you just level for like 5 Spellweaver. If you have Spellweaver headliner, you're still just going to level for like Ahri and then maybe Akali on 8. Either way, you're going to end up with 5/5 on level 8. The duo carry in this comp can be either Lulu or Ahri. I think both have their merits. Lulu, you can get early and you can reroll for 3-star. Ahri can help you a lot with like single target. Tank items usually just go on whatever tank you 2-star first. I don't think that there's enough. I think Echo 2 is stronger than Nico 2. But Nico 3 is a lot stronger than Echo 3. Usually you don't have both upgrade at the same time, so you just itemize whatever one you have upgraded. It's not the end of the world if you have itemized Nico 2, no items on Echo. I mean, that actually goes for all these. I will say you want your tank items on Mord in the Kayle comp. You probably want MR Shard as well, either like a Shiv on Lulu or a Spark on frontline as well. Next comp we have is the Superfan Jazz line. I usually play this with Bard headliner. I think, I mean, obviously people used to play this with MF headliner. I think that's decent. It's just, it comes online really, really slow or really, really late. And if you don't have like an econ augment, you're probably not going to hit 3-star before you die, just because MF2 was just quite weak compared to like how early you hit Bard 3. Bard BIS is going, like blue buff is a necessity. I cannot stress this enough. If you do not have blue buff on Bard, you're going 9th. So I wouldn't try to play this comp at all unless you have a tier. The reason why blue buff is so good, even though you have adaptive, is just like, it just, number one, it's instacast, and number two, the breakpoints of like when he autos and like when the adaptive mana proc comes in just lines up like so well. Like trust, like just watch the fights with blue buff adaptive Bard, it just looks perfect. And then his last best item, the stats say it's JG with the setup. I really couldn't tell you why. I would assume that something like Rabadon's would just be straight up better. The stats like JG more. I even filtered out That's Jazz Baby because I thought like it might be filtering in like getting the extra AP from that augment. But even without That's Jazz Baby, JG still performs the best. So I don't know. It's a lot easier to build than Rabadon's. You don't need 2 rods. So yeah, there you go, JG. You can itemize either MF or Kaisa as a duo in this comp. Kai'Sa's another 2 cost, so it's either to 3-star, but if you have something like that, Jazz Baby, MF is going to be better. And then same thing we talked about in Seraphine, tank items go on Echo or Nico, depending on whatever you have upgraded. Last off, in this Superfan AP line, we have the Cat Reroll. BIS is going to be JG Hodge, and then you get Hodge as a Superfan. Full crit, 100% crit. You get 4 Crowd Diver in, and with the buff, she'll one-shot stuff and heal up. I will say though, I think this comp is like, I like it less than the other ones because I think she's pretty reliant on having Crowd Diver headliner as compared to Country. I know there are some people that say like Country Cat is fine, but it performs so much worse in the stats. Maybe people are playing it wrong. Maybe 2 Crowd Diver with, like, I don't know, Random Thresh is fine. Like, maybe it's fine. Maybe I'm underrating it, but I feel like the 4 Crowd Diver and like being able to cap around 6 Crowd Diver is very important. And with the new, like they removed a lot of like the optimizations you can do with headliners. So it's very, very hard to force a very specific headliner. Right now, I usually just take whatever unit. I don't even worry about the headliner anymore because it's just so hard to get the other one. So that's the reason why I think this comp is less consistent than the other ones. And also, it kind of requires you hitting Zed as a duo carry. You're going to be hitting it later than the other comps because you're rerolling. And a lot of lines want Zed. Like all the Heartsteel players want Zed, and often the Ahri players want Zed as well. So your duo carry is harder to hit, and your crowd and your headliner that you want is hard to get. Like Dazzler Bard, for instance, is a lot worse than Jazz, honestly, but it's better than it's more useful than Country is for Cat. Same thing with Seraphine. KD is better, but Spellweaver's still good. Kayle, I honestly don't think it matters. Edgelord is basically a full fawn because you don't even want to play any Edgelord besides Viego, but getting a +1 Pentakill means you can push up to 7 Pentakill as well. But with Cat, she feels pretty tied to getting a specific headliner, and that's hard to do this patch. But she's still solid if you get the comp online. And yeah, those are like the only comps I feel like are worth discussing. Obviously, these are not all of the comps in the meta. I don't think a video that goes over every single comp is very valuable. At some point, you probably don't want to be open to every single comp because you might just get like too dizzy on roll downs, like holding units for like 7 different comps, trying to be flexible. Notable things I like didn't talk about are like, I don't know, Annie reroll, Jinx reroll, the whole disco line in general, Olaf reroll, Mosher, Jax, Gnar, Urgot. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of about it. Yeah, just to recap. Soul S tier is Heartsteel, and then we have a bunch of A tier comps. A lot of Superfan lines, like Superfan Pentakill, Superfan Ahri Melee, Superfan Kayle, Superfan Seraphine, Superfan Bard, Superfan Katarina. We have the melee comps to counter the Karthus builds, Viego or Yone and Riven, same as last patch. And then we have the Executioner line with Twin Terror and without. I consider all of these comps A tier, and I consider Heartsteel to be the Soul S tier. Yeah, that's gonna be about it for this video. Hope you guys got something out of it. Was yapping for a lot of it. Anyways, see ya.